there. Welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty good show for you here today with the NFL season winding down. We are going to talk the MVP race because that's a big one. But before we get to that, if you haven't already, you know what time it is. Please, if you're here on YouTube, go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. Make sure you kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast, and we should come right up. You can subscribe right there. If you enjoy the content, make sure you go ahead and give us that like, give us that 5-star review, and leave a comment. All that stuff helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. So, NFL, the best season in American sports. I think it's fair to say that, right? The length is just about right. The importance of each and every game is just about right. You only have 17 games, so you can't be playing around. The urgency, the flipping from worst to first and first to worst every season is just awesome. It's just every game matters so much. Kind of like college football, but in a different way, right? So everything is about trying to get to the playoffs. Everything is about trying to stay healthy. Everything is about playing your absolute best. But this particular show is not necessarily focusing on the team element, right? So we have a situation here where we're looking at the MVP race, and we've been hearing a lot of talk this year about, is this the year that Dak Prescott gets the most valuable player award in the NFL? And before I get into that, one of the things I often talk about is the definition of most valuable. Now, we see that, I think, more in the NBA, but to me, it's frustrating, right? I'm a guy that I like standards. I like things to be kind of set in, clear, definable boundaries. This is what it is. This is what it's not, right? I really like that. And for me, it's problematic, this whole notion of the MVP award, because what happens is you get a situation where, because there are no clear defined standards, it's about storylines. It's about what this reporter thinks versus what that reporter thinks, and what this media member thinks versus what that media member thinks. And I'm not really cool with that, right? It should be, you can win an award if you hit a clear and defined set of standards and you're the best. First of all, we don't even know what people are looking for when it comes to the MVP. And most times it's not actually most valuable, right? Realistically, we've gotten to a point, much like the Heisman, it's kind of, in general, not every single year, but in general, it's the best quarterback on one of the best teams, right? And speaking of the quarterback thing, I think what needs to happen in the NFL is they need to make a separate quarterback award, right? Same way they got the Davey O'Brien Golden Arm Award in college football, something along those lines, and make a quarterback award. You can give that, right? Because the MVP is not truly open to every player in the NFL, right? Unless you do something so obscenely record-breaking, you're probably not going to get it if you're not a quarterback, right? And so I think that's kind of disingenuous. Anyway, it's not even always most valuable, right? Realistically, what you get more times is most outstanding. And just like we have in college basketball, like the most outstanding player award in the NCAA tournament, well, why can't the NFL give that? If that's what you're really awarding, go ahead and call it that. Call it the most outstanding player award, MOP, right? Not MVP, because there are players that are more valuable to really good teams that don't even get considered for the award. And I think, like I said, I think that's ridiculous. But that's a story for another day. We could talk about that another time. What it should be, how the award should be evaluated in terms of who wins it and what it should be called, etc. So anyway, we got 3 main candidates, I think, this year for the MVP award at this point. And that's, of course, Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. I mean, I shouldn't say of course, because for the most part, he hasn't really been a true MVP candidate before. He is this year. I think a lot of that has to do with narrative, and we'll get to that. We've got Tyreek Hill, who may be on pace to break the all-time NFL receiving yards record in a single season. He's gunning for 2,000 yards. He made that clear when the season started, and that may happen for him. I think with 4 games left, he's at 1542, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. I got it in front of me. Tyreek Hill, it's currently sitting on 1,542 receiving yards for the year with 4 games left. So if he can stay healthy and really get a couple big games in there, he can break 2,000 yards for the first time in NFL history. And that, I think, would put him in legitimate MVP discussion. And the third guy I think we can talk about, of course, is Brock Purdy, quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. That guy, he's legit. And I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why people don't want to, put him in the category of a possible MVP quarterback or a guy that could be elite in the future. But, we'll get to that. So I guess we can start with Dak Prescott. Why can't we, right? So as you know, if you watch this channel, I'm a guy that's kind of railed against Dak Prescott for years in terms of I never thought that he deserved the contract that he got last time he got paid. I.e., I never believed that Dak Prescott should ever have been the highest paid player in the history of the league. And chances are he will be that again. And now I know some of that is the nature of the way these NFL quarterback contracts get played out, and contracts at most positions, if you're an elite player, right? When you're up, you get more money than the last guy, regardless of whether or not you're better than the last guy. I don't agree with that. I think that you should earn what you get in life, but that's a different story. Anyway, Dak Prescott is a guy he's having an incredible season, arguably one of the best seasons he's ever had. Most of the pundits are saying they've never seen him play this well. This is a guy that his team, and quarterback win-loss is a quarterback stat as well, even though it takes an entire team to do it. But that's cool because they are the most important player in team sports, so we get it. The Cowboys this year are 10-3, and Dak Prescott is playing outstanding. He's completing 69% of his passes. He has 3,505 passing yards, 7.8 yards per attempt. Keep that one in mind, 7.8 yards per attempt. We're going to come back to it. And he's thrown 28 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions on the year, right? So he has cut down on all the turnovers he had last year. He's throwing the touchdowns. And this is something I can fairly say, right? Because if you know me, when I talked about Dak previously, one of the things I really got on him about was the fact that this was a guy that you couldn't really put all the weight of an offense on him. He had to do it all coming off of, an elite running game. And in the past, the more he's thrown the ball, the worse his team has fared, right? He might have put up big stats, as Shannon Sharp likes to say, empty calories, but his team didn't fare as well when he threw the ball a lot. And when obviously the Cowboys in the past were in a position where they were getting, 100 plus rushing yards per game, Dak's numbers were excellent. When they didn't get that, not so much. But this is a year where they have legitimately relied on Dak Prescott to be the guy and to be that linchpin for the offense. Now, that said, that defense has done a tremendous job too, right? You got Deron Bland at corner, setting an NFL record for pick sixes in the season. I think he's got 6 of those. He's probably going to be first team All-Pro here. So that's a lot of points right there that assist in leading to wins in the win column, which is helping Dak. The defense getting a lot of sacks, forcing a lot of turnovers. So all that stuff is helping. But again, Dak Prescott on his side of the ball has done a tremendous job. So, I can't take anything away from that. Now, Tyreek Hill. We're going to go to Tyreek Hill. Then we're going to get to Brock Purdy. I want to leave Brock Purdy for last, and there's a reason for that. Anyway, Tyreek Hill at this point, I mentioned it earlier, he's got 97 catches on the year and 1,542 receiving yards for an average of 15.9. We can round it up to 16 yards per catch and 12 touchdowns, right? He'll also be first team All-Pro. Just an incredible season by him. 4 games remaining, and he's in very good possibility to reach his stated goal of 2,000 receiving yards. It can happen. What does he need here? 458 receiving yards in 4 games. He can do that. He gets a couple of big ones, it can happen. He may come close, he may not get it, but he can do it. So the reason you make an argument for Tyreek or the Cheetah or whatever you want to call him is the fact that you see a huge difference, a huge drop-off in the production of his quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, and that overall Miami Dolphin offense when he is not on the field. He is an absolute difference maker. And that's the whole point, right? Most valuable player. That's the whole thing that we talk about here. Most valuable player, not the best player, not the best player on the best team, most valuable. And his presence or lack thereof makes such a huge difference in what this team being the Miami Dolphins is able to do offensively, and it changes the entire paradigm of the offensive production. And so I think there is a very legitimate argument for Tyreek Hill as most valuable player in the league. Now, the problem with that is what? Of course, he's not a quarterback, but even though wide receiver is an extremely dependent position because the quarterback has to throw it to you, we see that his quarterback Tua is nowhere near what he is with and without Tyreek on the field. So I think that's a huge argument for Tyreek, and he should have heavy consideration in the MVP. But I think even if he breaks the record, he's not going to get it. One, because he's not a quarterback. Two, because he doesn't have a star on his helmet. But that's a different thing. Anyway, okay, finally, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, right? Last guy picked in the draft. I want to say that he's lost only 3 starts in his entire career, and that was a 3-game stretch this season. But Brock Purdy, now, remember, let me run back Dak Prescott's stats for you real quick before we go on. Dak Prescott, 10-3 record this year, 69.3% completions, 3,505 yards, 7.8 yards per attempt, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Fantastic season. Brock Purdy, a guy who a lot of people want to say is just a system quarterback, and he's just dropping it off. I was listening to the Up On Game podcast yesterday, and LeVar Arrington and Plaxico Burress were discussing this Brock Purdy thing, and they were discussing more specifically Cam Newton's comments about game changers versus game managers. And Cam Newton has Brock Purdy firmly entrenched in the game manager camp. Now, at the end of the day, Brock Purdy, with all the weapons and the talent on his team around him, defensively and offensively, is probably going to need to win a Super Bowl to get the respect that he deserves. However, I heard Plaxico Burress, in discussing this with LeVar Arrington, say that Brock Purdy is a guy, he doesn't go through his reads, he doesn't go through his progressions, and he's just taught that use Christian McCaffrey as a safety valve if your first read is not there. Now, that was disturbing when I heard that, being that Plaxico Burress is a longtime NFL player. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's a multiple-time Pro Bowler. This guy is a very, very good NFL wide receiver. Not quite a Hall of Famer, but probably on that next level down, right? So it was disturbing to me to hear that this is a guy who theoretically knows the game, but is just going along pushing the narrative. And so anyway, the reason I read you Dak Prescott stats is, now check this out. Brock Purdy, and I'm gonna put those up on the screen so that you can see them together. Brock Purdy, 10-3, so same record, and mind you, destroyed Dak Prescott in the head-to-head matchup. Obviously, they don't play against each other. They're both quarterbacks, but you get the point. 49ers routed the Cowboys when they played earlier in the season. But Brock Purdy now, 3,553 passing yards, more than Dak. 9.9 yards per attempt, more than Dak. 25 touchdowns, just a few less than Dak. And 7 interceptions, 1 more than Dak. Now, the 25 passing touchdowns, the numbers are what they are, but adding a little context, the 49ers run the football more than any team in the NFL, right? And we just finished talking earlier about how this is the first year that the Dallas Cowboys don't have an elite run game for Dak to rely on. So that's going to account for that difference in 3 passing touchdowns. Now, you got people like Plaxico Burress and others saying that Brock Purdy's just a system guy. Brock Purdy just dumps it off and his receivers do the rest. Well, if he just dumps it off and his receivers do the rest, how is he averaging 9.9 yards per attempt? How's he doing that? Which in the NFL, I believe I heard this stat. I'll have to verify it, but I believe I heard this stat was that's the most in the past 60 years, right? Because I think Kurt Warner was like 9.8 when he won the Super Bowl and won MVP. So we get this, Brock Purdy's just a system guy, but he has more passing yards than Dak. He has a higher completion percentage than Dak. He averages more yards per attempt than Dak, which means his team trusts him and he pushes the ball down the field. And he's doing all this on the most run-heavy offense in the NFL. So where are we getting this narrative that Brock Purdy is just a system guy and Brock Purdy is just dumping it off and his receivers are doing the rest and Brock Purdy shouldn't be in the NFL running, right? It doesn't make sense, right? We talk about this all the time. Narratives and narratives and narratives. It doesn't make sense because I guarantee you, if Brock Purdy was a first-round draft pick, people would be talking about it much differently. Now, does Brock Purdy have great coaching offensively? Yes. Does Brock Purdy have great weapons? Yes. Does Brock Purdy have a great defense to help him succeed? Yes. He has all those things, just like Dak Prescott. But let me tell you the difference between Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy. Y'all ready for this? Dak Prescott's got a star on his helmet. That's the difference. He plays for the Dallas Cowboys. He has got the media machine behind him. That's the difference. And so, because there's been this argument for so many years about is Dak elite or is Dak not elite, and the Cowboys and having the opportunity to win the championship and America's team and the star, and you're seeing the Cowboys all the time because just about every week they're on America's Game of the Week, or they have more primetime games than any other team in the NFL, like year in and year out. All these things are playing into Dak being the clubhouse leader for the MVP award. Now, again, is Dak playing a tremendous game this season? He absolutely is. I can't take that away from him. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. But is he definitively the MVP? Well, you got a team that has the same record as the Cowboys do and smashed them head to head, and that team's quarterback is actually playing better and putting up better numbers. What's your argument for having Dak Prescott ahead of Brock Purdy, except for having the star on his helmet? There is no argument. So what I want to know from you is Dak Prescott the MVP this year? Should he be the MVP this year? Should it be Brock Purdy? Should it be Tyreek Hill if he has a sensational season? Well, he's already had a sensational season, but should it be Tyreek Hill if he ends up breaking the all-time receiving yards record? Leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear from you. Can't wait to get back to you. See you next time, and I'm out. Peace.